of the custom mount.
Yeah, that was a nice
I
little
love
touch.
that. Everything about this is beautiful.
There we go. Alright, what's up everybody? My name is Jake, and this is the Exile Gamer channel. And at this point you're probably wondering why it looks like there's an entire Super Smash Bros. Melee tournament happening in this computer right next to me. And I'm going to break down what exactly the whole purpose of this is. About around Christmas time of 2021, so 3 months ago, give or take, my friend Ryan came to me and said that he had this crazy idea that he wanted to fuse a GameCube with a PC and make the ultimate tribute to a GameCube. And I thought, well, that sounds insane. I'm totally going to do it. So we got together in January and we did a little planning session, and we figured out that there's enough room in this massive computer here to take this GameCube shell and put it inside, and then we're going to give the whole thing a GameCube themed paint job. And then, as a bonus, for all his emulated games, we're going to mount in the front of the computer itself, right around here, a built-in controller port. So we came up with that crazy idea about 2 months ago, and after planning and discussing and Ryan ordering parts, today is the day that I'm going to do it and break down and build this whole thing out. So to kind of give you an idea of what we're working with here, Ryan's got an AMD CPU, so he's got a 3800X in here, and this is a 2060 Super GPU, all wrapped up inside this enormous Be Quiet Dark Base 700 case. This thing is massive, as you can tell. I know the GameCube's not exactly the biggest console in the world, but I can fit an entire GameCube. In fact, I could go get my own GameCube and fit it in here with his GameCube. There's that much space. And you've also probably noticed that this thing is inverted, I guess is a good way to put it, because you got your GPU up top, above your CPU, and the fans are facing up. So now you know the basic concept of what we're going for here. I'm going to start getting into the dirty work of this thing and taking it all apart, and then I'm going to show you all the parts that I'm going to customize, Dremel, paint, sand, and all that stuff right about here. Oh, there it all is. Wow, it's almost like that was movie magic or something. Let me just give you guys a quick rundown of everything that I've got here to paint. We've got a GPU shroud here. Then we've got our power supply shrouds. I don't know, they're plastic pieces that sit above the power supply. Speaking of power supply, your computer's facing this way, your power supply's behind here. Motherboard shrouds. So this covers a fan, and then this covers your I/O. This is going to be the front panel, and this is going to get painted. GPU backplate right here. So this is going to get painted, and I think that I'm going to keep the center white line and keep the Gigabyte branding on it. And then finally, this is the top panel. This is all the parts that I'm going to paint and cut up and customize. And for all that work, that needs to be done down in the shop because there's zero airflow down here, and I really don't want to spray paint in the basement and proceed to suffocate myself. So I'm going to haul everything out there, and then I'm going to make a little montage down there, and I'll see you guys afterward. Alright, Future Jake here, and I'm just going to do a little voiceover to explain some of the things you're about to see in this time-lapse, because I do quite a lot of different things throughout, and I mess up quite a lot of things, so I wanted to be able to give a little extra detail and explain these a little bit better. So the first thing I end up doing is disassembling and cleaning the whole case. The disassembly process I didn't show because it's just taking apart a basic computer. Then I decided, well, let's try and get the front I/O cutout and put in and get the GameCube controllers mounted. And I thought this would be relatively simple. Cut out a little stencil and then trace it onto the front of the case, and then we can kind of, just take the Dremel and cut out the shape. That was completely wrong. That is not how any of that happened, and you'll see that in a second. So I'm drilling out these little pilot holes so I know where to start dremeling and tracing through, and then I realize on the back there's thick sound deadening, so I gotta scrape all that off. In the meantime, after scraping that off, I realize that there's an LED strip that runs up the middle, so I can't cut this in half. With that in mind, I decide, well, let's skip that for now and try and troubleshoot it later, and we'll move on to taping and paint prep. So that's what you see here. I'm just taping off the various pieces that I wanted to paint and keeping the colors that are already there. So like the GPU shrouds and some of the other things, I wanted to keep the branding.
I can't believe you've done this.
So once I got that paint prep ready, I decided to try and troubleshoot the controller ports, which are now going to be mounted on the top because there's nothing, electronic up there. So I decided to move everything to the top, and while test fitting it, I broke the actual controllers. So I had to fix them and resolder everything back on. Now you can see me taking the same measurements I made on that front panel. I'm now applying them to the front panel and using the same strategy. So I'm drilling these 4 pilot holes at the corners of where this is going to go. And then I had to cut some of the sound deadening out of this so that when I was dremeling, I wasn't melting it and throwing it all over the place. So I break out the Dremel, and I've got my 4 corner holes, and I'm just running the Dremel down each side and cutting it out. It's nothing special. If you've ever used a Dremel, it's just a little cutting wheel. Once we got the rough shape cut out, I decided that it was time to refine it and file it down because we cut smaller than the actual piece, because if you cut too big, you can't put anything back. So we cut extra small, and so began the filing process. Me and Ryan took turns and probably spent, 30 or 40 minutes trying to get the fitment on this perfect. And you'll see here in a second, right after this clip, that it is a snug fit and it actually pops into place. It's really a great fit. So once we got that fitted in, it was time to start cutting on the case itself, because we do mount an entire Gamecube in here. So same concept, I put the Gamecube in, took the measurements, and then got to cutting with the Dremel. And this, what I'm cutting here, is on top of the power supply, so it's kind of where the power supply shrouds clip in, and there's a power supply shroud on the front. So we're basically just cutting one whole square out of this, and the Gamecube seats right inside. And this too is a really snug fit. You'll see that if we were to leave it go, it would just float there. It's a very tight fit. And it just so happened that the base of the Gamecube had it sit up perfectly high enough so that it was visible inside the case. This right here is the last cut we had to make. So this is on top of the PC where the controller cords would come through. They would hit the fan bracket, so we had to cut a little hole in that. But after that, that was all the modifications we had to do to the case, and it was all ready for more paint prep. So we taped off the top and front plates, and then decided to sand them up, and then it was back to taping other things like the GPU backplate here, and I think that was about it for this section. The GPU backplate was the last thing. Once we did all that, we laid down a coat of primer, and by we, I mean me. Ryan came over for one Saturday and helped me out and did all the filing, and then after that it was just kind of me doing my own thing. So I mixed the paint with some just basic acrylic paint, red, blue, white, and some thinner, and got as close to Gamecube purple as I could, and then started laying it down with my airbrush gun. And this process was difficult to learn because I'd never used an airbrush gun before, but once I got into it, it was actually kind of therapeutic going back and forth. The one thing I did learn, though, is that this airbrush gun is not meant for big pieces like the top and the front of this computer. I was making way too many small movements and had to go over it several times so it looked like a smooth top coat. The next project I do will have a much, much bigger paint gun to do these large pieces with. So once I got my base coat of paint down, I decided to let that dry, and this is all over the course of 2 weeks. This entire process took about 2 weeks. So this is not all one consecutive night. The next thing we decided to do was that I wanted to customized the memory card slots from the Gamecube to accept a USB drive, and they fit pretty well inside here. I got a basic USB 3.0 splitter and found that it could mount pretty snugly inside of the actual memory card port. So we did a little cutting and sanding and got this to the point where it would fit inside. And of course, you know, plenty of filing and refining to make sure everything fits properly. So after a lot of test fitting for these USB ports, it was time to mount everything in. And for this entire project, I used probably half a tube of 2-part epoxy to get everything stuck where I wanted it to. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm taping the memory cards in place, and then you can see that they sit up straight perfectly. So I went around the edges of the memory card with the epoxy to hold the frames in place. Once I got the frames in place, it was time to do some measurements and figure out exactly where the USB slots were going to go inside, and I wanted to mount them. But another little kink happened, and I epoxied the doors shut, so they would no longer open. So we had to pivot again, and this actually ended up working out way better, because before, with the door, if you were to put a USB drive in, it has to open the door, and it's a very tight slot. So only very small USB drives would fit. In this case, we just mounted them straight to the back of the door, cut the hole out, and you can fit almost any USB drive into this. And as you can see, I'm doing a lot of test fitting, using multiple different drives, and actually using the drives as kind of a way to prop the USB ports in place as I epoxy them in. Because if the drive is in there while it gets epoxied, theoretically, it should still fit. I use that same exact concept for mounting the controller ports. So I would literally put the port up to the back of the faceplate and then plug the controllers in, and that would hold the ports in place. So then while they were stuck there, I taped them down and epoxied them too. And this is clear coating, and this is where the most major tragedy of this entire process occurred. The clear coat I chose did not work with the acrylic paint that I decided to use. So you'll see here in a second what that looks like, and also the face of absolute defeat. I was stunned at this point, and honestly didn't know what I was going to do, because this was probably 10 hours of paint and prep work, and this clear coat literally just dissolved it and bubbled it up, like you can see in these pictures. And in this clip, this is after my third run to Lowe's to get different paints. You can see that it was still not agreeing, and I was still working on finding different paints. So it was literally dissolving it to the point where I could scrape it off. In the end, though, I found that Rust-Oleum primer and clear coat would work with my acrylics and not dissolve them. So a lot more sanding and prep work, and took everything back down the base, and then it was repainting again. So I mixed up more paint and started getting back to it. This mistake overall probably cost me 3 days worth of work, because I had to figure out how to fix it, figure out what paints to use, re-sand it, scrape all the old paint off, and repaint almost everything. On the bright side, the two biggest pieces, the front plate and the top plate, were totally fine. So I didn't clear coat those, and they didn't dissolve. Right here, I'm just painting some stencils. I 3D printed some stencils up, thinking that I could simply paint the logos on, and this didn't really work out either. Paint was my biggest enemy throughout this entire process, and as you can see, it's okay, but these photos show how fuzzy and how much overspray there was, even under that stencil that I taped down. So at this point, I had to once again troubleshoot what to do, so I retaped over the gray and decided to see if I could fill in and respray the purple over the gray overspray. This helped, but it wasn't great, and you can see me going around the edges and trying to really get the overspray to go away. And I'm just doing the same thing for the top logo and the front logo. And you'll see here on the peel, it's kind of hard to see, but this was better, just not perfect. So this ended up having to be completely changed, and you'll see that in a second. And by completely changed, I mean using my laser engraver to cut perfect shapes out of tape so that I know the painting process will be perfect. So the first, I tried to just cut the shapes out and use tweezers to overlay them, because I was still on this idea that I could save what I had already done, and I realized that was insane. So after trying that, I decided, well, maybe I can touch it up with a brush and a toothpick and some black paint. And while this definitely improved it and was the best version yet, it wasn't perfect. So, once again, I had to start over from square one, or circle one in this case, and I painted over the whole Nintendo logo and painted it black, so I just had a basic black circle. Cue in version 2 of the laser etcher, and at this point I just taped over the whole thing and am flat out burning away the tape to make a perfect stencil on the circle. And this got me great results, which you will see at the end in the final montage. For the front, I decided to just 3D print up a real thin logo, and that I would paint the logo in like a Gamecube gray tricolor configuration, which you're seeing here. So the top was light gray, the bottom left was medium gray, and the bottom right was a dark gray. That way it has a three-way contrast. Now it's time for final assembly, so I am epoxying the controller ports to the top plate, and after I got that done, it was time to actually assemble the computer. I didn't record a whole lot of this because it was just basic assembly of a computer, but we did get custom cable extensions, these nice Gamecube purples, and they really help bring the whole theme together inside the computer. Okay, well, everything's roughly plugged back in, so let's see if this burns to the ground. And whew, it has been like 50 some odd hours of work since the last time this thing has been turned on and functioning. And let me tell you what, seeing that screen is a ridiculous, breath of fresh air, a nice relief, a little less anxiety. All right, well, she's coming along. So inside here, we did run out of USB headers, so I did have to buy a USB 2.0 splitter because there is about 7 different types of LED lighting. We got LED strips, the motherboard, the cooler, the fans, the front panel, the case itself, all has its own unique USB lighting system. So we had to split a couple of the USB 2.0 headers to get proper power and management of the LEDs. If you like what you see here, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe because it really helps me grow and keeps me motivated to do more stuff like this. But as you'll see in my final thoughts, I loved this project and think it turned out great. So there will definitely be more of these in the future. Well, the project is finally done. Everything's complete. Paint job, controller ports, USB slots, the logo on the front, all the lighting's done, the internal paint. There's a whole frickin' GameCube in here. The controller's in there. It's done and it's incredible. I kinda don't wanna take it back to my friend who had me build it for him. But I gotta wrap the video up and take it back to him, unfortunately. This project started at an estimated 2 days worth of work because I was incredibly naive to the amount of effort and work and thought that was needed to go into this thing. I thought I was going to be able to bang this out in a weekend and be done with it, but I wasn't even close. I am on week 2, and I'm estimating, I've kind of lost count, but I'm estimating I'm at about 70 hours worth of work. Now, I did mess up a bunch of stuff and had to redo a lot of things, specifically with paint. I have never painted anything like this, ever. Honestly, the last time I think I ever painted anything, I was probably in a high school art class. This process was both incredibly stressful, but also this has been the most satisfying thing I have ever done. I am so proud of how this turned out, and I want one. I want one for myself. I want this framed and put up on a wall. It feels like an art piece to me. And I think Ryan is gonna lose his mind when he sees it, because I haven't sent him any updates since. You know, I built PCs before, just regular gaming PCs, nothing special. This thing is special. I can't wait to do the next one. Well, maybe a week break. I'm gonna go take this to Ryan. We're gonna get his reaction to it. I hope you guys really enjoyed seeing this process of me making this computer. I hope you all learned a little bit, and I would encourage anyone who would ever want to do, not this specifically, but if you want to do a custom computer build, go for it, because it is so satisfying to complete something like this. We're gonna head off to Ryan and see what he thinks of this thing.
My heart's racing more than it should.
I know, it's great.
Oh my goodness. I thought I was gonna be on. So that means I get to hit the button?
Oh yeah, you get to turn it on.
I love this. Oh my gosh. That wave.
It's so perfect.
It literally has the Gamecube.
I couldn't leave it as the standard Windows mountains, and then that's what the lights actually look like. They take a minute to kick in once everything starts up.
Oh, so that was just like a rainbow.
Yeah. This is what I set it to, and it's actually
I like
pretty.
this. I like this more than the rainbow.
And the front LEDs work. I didn't destroy them. The software just wasn't installed.
Oh, the custom mount.
Yeah, it was a nice
I
little
love
touch.
that.
Everything about this is beautiful.
This is the only computer on the planet that even remotely looks like this.
Yes.
And I would bet my life savings that it's the only one with embedded GameCube controller ports. And then this 3D piece on the front turned out good. That's held on with just super glue.
Love it.
Oh, it's so good.
It wasn't gradient, but it's still pretty awesome.
I did the tri-color. Yeah, I like did some test gradients on paper, and I was like, I'm gonna screw this up. I need to actually practice that. So I figured the 3 colors holds up pretty well.
Can I look or not yet?
Oh yeah, everyone's welcome to come in.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful.
Woo-hoo! That.
Oh, wow. Where are the anime chicks?
On the computer.
The figurines are on the way.
So now that my chair is purple and my computer's purple, I'm gonna get a purple desk.
No.
I'm gonna paint it as purple.
No.
No, you gotta paint the wall purple.
No.
And then that one pink.
Perfect.
I just killed myself.